Hello and most welcome to 1874 of the service. We will today continue with Francis Lin, Wittgenstein on the impossibility of following a rule only once. Last time we started to get into the complexities of this article. I'm really glad I brought this article with me because it's definitely a challenge. This is as good time as ever to have a place to really think about these things. One needs quiet, separatedness, and a different perspective to get into this text. And I'd say humor as well. Don't do the mistake of taking any text too serious. Let it be open. Let it shine forward. Yeah, I like the beer example with from Savigny and how or was it Genet, how the well blew up. So the poor Genet could not do the rule following more than once. And as we started to get into that, could have some problems, that saying. Could be that we iterate things, and it is the implicit iteration that is the rule. Something that we cannot, like Genet, say, oh, I understand there is a rule here, and I can explain it and express it, can be explicit. No, 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 no. This is not how the grammatical rules of language works. They are most often, in the majority of cases, impossible to talk about. They are truly implicit. Because too much is connected. Too many aspects of reality, all the connections in the universe. It is not so hard, I would say, to realize that is way beyond what we can get into an explanation. It will not be done by the ludicrous oversimplification of all men are bearded, Aristotle is a bearded man, and therefore Aristotle is a man. No. Not a chance that that would cover anything. Or to bring Kalle's subject in, where one single person or a group of persons, or even the whole of modernity says that the Qumran readings of the Bible are truer than the ones actually in the Bible. That does not cover any of the complexity that the Bible is. Maybe a billion times more complex than that saying. And the mistaken belief, utterly mistaken belief, that you can explain what is original. Cannot explain that. It's much bigger than our explanatory power. As we also learned from Carlo Rovelli, quantum relations, and Mrs. Roberto Unger and Lee Smolin. I think it's especially clear in the cosmological fallacy, the misunderstanding that you can, so to say, explain the universe from the outside. First, there was a big bang, and then we have the following, and then we have that, and so on and so on. That will not cover what we need for understanding at all. Because it's so much more. In quantum mechanics, nothing is repeatable explicitly, but it is repeatable implicitly, beyond words, partly covered by the formulas that explain quantum mechanics, but also in that case only partly. And let me repeat the realization from last lectures. 1873. The future is not a composite of the past. That sort of builds up it piece by piece, deterministically. No. The future is wide open, so is the past. It needs to follow implicit rules, but we can only know those indirectly and implicitly, not by manner of simple causal explanations, like A implies B implies C. I think you get the drift by now. And I continue the reading on page 143. Four point two, the individualist view. Baker and Hacker are the most eloquent advocates of the individualist view. Which says that the person in complete isolation can follow a rule. According to them, what is essential to rule following is regularity in action, but not community. There are several possible reasons for the individualistic view. One reason is perhaps the influence of Anscombe's translation of PI 198. The crucial sentence in PI 198 is: a person goes by a signpost only insofar as there exists a regular use of signposts, a custom. Baker and Hacker interpret the above sentence as saying that rules are conceptually related to normative regularities. And that there is a regular use of a formulation of a rule as a standard of correctness and a custom of regularly going by it in this way. The second reason is that the notion of regularity can help to explain the not one person once remark. As said at the end of the preceding subsection, if rule following must involve regularity, then it cannot be a one-off thing. Since regularity entails more than once. Baker and Hacker explain this thinking explicitly. This is from Baker and Hacker, Wittgenstein's second. The point is deepened by paragraph 199. Which emphasizes that following a rule requires an established regularity of behavior, and it is not something which just one man might do just once in his life. To follow a rule is to engage in an activity that exemplifies a regularity recognized as a uniformity. The same idea is also expressed as follows. one can be said to follow a signpost only in the context of an established use of signposts. More generally, one can talk of following rules only in the context of practices. Following rules, making reports, giving and understanding orders, playing games are essentially connected with regularities. They are customs, established patterns of behavior, to judge an act to be a case of following a rule is to see it as an instance of a normative regularity against a context of related normative regularities. Hence, it is not possible that in the history of the world, only one man should follow a rule only once. The third reason for Baker and Hacker's developing the individualist view is that they see some problems with Wittgenstein's remark that rule following is a custom and a practice. So they understand Wittgenstein as really saying that rule following is based on regularity, since they argue that custom or practice means regularity and does not necessarily refer to a social activity.
Social.
Social. There are a number of problems with Baker and Hacker's interpretation in terms of regularity. First, in PI 198, Wittgenstein does not use the word regular. The German word is ständig, which has been translated by some commentators as established or firm rather than regular. Second, the word regular does not appear in PI 199 at all. So there seems to be a jump
Jump. Jump.
From the text, jump from the text of PI 199 to the view that rule following must involve regularity.
Regularity. Jump.
Regularity.
Let's make a jump.
Third, must a rule be followed regularly? It is often the case that we can tell from a person's one or two applications of a rule that he is following the rule. In such cases, applying a rule regularly is not necessary. For instance, a boss said workers who are late for work shall be fired. And the next day, a worker came late for work and the boss fired him. In this example, didn't the boss follow the rule he set up? Although his action did not yet show any sign of regularity.
Regularity.
Regularity. Regularity. I think that we would answer yes.
Yes.
Yes. A resounding yes. Yes.
Yes.
So regularity seems to be too strong a requirement for all rule following. Let us call the view that regularity is essential for following every rule the strong regularity-based view. It might be objected that Baker and Hacker do not commit to this strong view.
Strong. Strong.
Strong. So let us consider a more charitable reading of the view, which may be called the weak regularity-based view.
Charitability. Charitable. More love. We need more love.
Yeah. According to this view, it is not that each individual person must follow each rule regularly. It is rather that regularity must be there in the background in order for us to talk sensibly about a person's following a rule. In other words, to say that the person follows a rule, he must have followed rules regularly before. So a person cannot follow a rule only once. This weak view thus can also explain the impossibility of following a rule only once. But the question is the view correct? The view is very close to, if not the same, as Colin McGinn's multiple application thesis. As we saw in section 3, the multiple application thesis is very problematic. I think that the same can be said of the weak regularity-based view.
Weak, 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 weak,
Weak, powerless, weak.
weak, weak.
Fourth, the indirect interpretation in terms of regularity, either in the strong form or in the weak form, does not solve the motivation puzzle. If the essence of rule following were regularity, then why didn't Wittgenstein say it directly in PI 199?
No.
Why? Why does he instead say that it can't be the case that only one person only one time follows a rule? Baker and Hacker's interpretation cannot answer such questions. The final problem with the individualist interpretation is that it is controversial. For the holders of community view, obviously disagree with it. No shock. So it cannot be attributed to Wittgenstein, who does not want to advance anything disputable. Reporter. 5. Rule following, customs and practices. A new interpretation.
A new.
New. In the preceding section, I examined a number of interpretations of the not one person once remark. The direct interpretations by Genet and Collin McGinn seek to show that the remark is false.
Oi. False.
Ouch. The indirect interpretations fail to explain why the remark is true or what Wittgenstein's motivation is for advancing it, or both. In fact, any indirect interpretations will fail to explain the motivation puzzle.
Oi, oi, oi. Ouch. Oi, oi.
Ouch, ouch, ouch. Oh dear. So to get an adequate understanding of the not one person once remark, we have no way but to seek a direct interpretation of it. One that does not aim to show that the remark is false, but that purports to explain that it is a true grammatical remark on rule following. By 1, a new direct interpretation of the not one person once remark. What would happen if a person only followed a rule once? There is the third person case, and there is the first person case. Let us investigate these in turn. Let us consider the rule for using the word red rum. Suppose that the person points to an object and says red. Can we say that he is following the rule? If this only happens once, then there is no way for us to determine what red means. It could mean the color, it could mean the shape, the size, the number, the hugeness, and etc. and etc. It would also be an unintentional noise, like a cough. Very good. Only when he applies the rule more than once can there be a possibility of telling whether he applies the rule. The more difficult case is the first person one. Why can't I use red to refer to the color of, say, the rose in front of me? And then decides never to speak of the word again in my life. Well, the problem lies in the expression use red to refer to the color of the rose. How can this be achieved? I must have seen a number of objects, perceive that they have different colors. So I decided to name one of the colors red. In doing this, I have already decided that this object is red. That object is not red, etc. Note that when saying that an object, for instance, an emerald, is not red, one is also following the rule for red. Yes, you do. So for my calling the rose red to make sense, I must have applied red to other objects, especially negatively. So my calling the rose red cannot really be a one-off act. This would be true even if there were only one red object in the universe. Likely impossible. In that case, I would still need to apply red positively to that unique object and negatively to other ones. And I think to make this lecture a bit shorter, I could stop there. 1874. Other ones being the last. And we are at page 146. I think we got our first clue here to the solution. I don't think it would be enough, but that would be a helping hand here. It will be something to lean on. And that was actually the last sentence here. This would be true even if there were only one red object in the universe. In that case, we would still need to apply red positively to that unique object and listen now negatively to other ones. We are doing two things at the same time when we point out redness. We both point out what is red and all the other colors: yellow, red, blue, green, black, or just other, murky. There is a double take here, something that Genet at least ignored. It does appear to me so far, I'm not absolutely certain, but it seems that he doesn't understand what the human/bear did with the mound. Was pointing out both where the vegetables were hanging around, the fruit, I think it was, and where the other stuff were: fish, vegetable, fruit, meat, whatever a bear stores away. It's a bit of an oversimplification, the Augustinian problem once more, that when St. Augustine points to a chair, he's only pointing that object. He also does a negative pointing, saying that all the other words apply to other things other than the thing I'm pointing to. And as you might understand, the pointing gesture itself could be the victim or the happy good fellow to that tendency. My pointing could be all things in the world and all words in the world except for the one I'm pointing to. This is something that we sometimes do in language. It's not very infrequent. For instance, when I say I can eat anything that doesn't contain lactose. Not true, but it serves as an example. What sort of pointing to lactose do I do? It's a negative one. If we go to page 144 and we go to the last paragraph there, There are a number of problems with Baker's and Hacker's interpretation in terms of regularity. First, in PI 198, Wittgenstein does not use the word regular. The German word is ständig, which has been translated by some commentators as established or firm rather than regular. And that is an extension of the word regular, I would say. And that my initial understanding was a slight misunderstanding, which is very important. We need to misunderstand the text initially to get it right at the end. Learning philosophical investigations, the Brown Book, the Blue Book, Settle, Last Notes, they all take in charge a misapprehension at the beginning. Very important. That makes you enter into the understanding. Wanting it to go correct directly could lead you astray. And ständig here is a very apt, at this instance, specification or change. It means more firm. And the firmity, I would say, is the implicitly laden or primed background. The priming is there. We have a little hint further down on the next page. If you go this is a rather dense one. This is 4-7 lines from the bottom of the first paragraph. And I start reading mid-in after the semicolon. It is rather that regularity must be there in the background in order for us to talk sensibly about a person's following a rule. In other words, to say that the person follows a rule, he must have followed rules regularly before. So a person cannot follow a rule only once. So this is the weak version, but I think it's strong enough for today's lecture. This is a facet, an aspect, a take that has been ignored by everyone. Let's take poor old St. Augustine once more. When he pointed to the chair, he didn't understand or think about that the person learning the chair expression must also know what a rule is. A rule is, when I see chair, I think chair or use the word chair. To have that established takes years in the development of a child, and it doesn't even develop in all. The IQ is lower than 75, it won't develop. A mistake can happen. Dyslexia is in the written language, partly not rule following. That's the problem with dyslexia. Rule following needs to be learned, it cannot be explained. It is not self-evident at all that I should use the word chair after St. Augustine has pointed to it. It doesn't make any sense at all. I'd say it takes also all of language, thousands of years of development of language. A development that couldn't happen twice also. the connectivity to the exterior, to the interior world and word connection, so to speak, in a simplified manner. Or when I sit on the chair, I somehow use the word chair, which is an oversimplification. The chair is a movement. I cannot solely point to it. I have to use it. Otherwise, the chair would lack almost all its meaning. It will be a concoction of wood. This is, of course, very close to what we mentioned in the previous lecture, 1873. The very idea that the past somehow, in a foreseeable way, should repeat itself as to make it impossible for someone to walk on water is equally wrong. Rule following is not explicit other than in abnormal cases, like ostension and rule number 2. The bachelor is an unmarried man. Let's go to the next page. And the subtitled mini chapter there, 5.1, the second sentence. And this is also important, and we mentioned that in context with Paul Johnston. Paul Johnston is very good at bringing in the explanatory power of the third person case and the first person case. So the third person case will explain what a first person learned in a rule following. His explanation will not be what the first person case is doing, but rather it's a different language game that have different purposes, different points, wits. That is very important. So my explaining why person B is following a rule is not the same at all what he is actually doing. It has no connection whatsoever. My explanation has a different purpose. My explanation has nothing to do with what is happening with person B, and especially not on his insides, his thinking. If I ask someone, where is the toilet? I am not interested where the person I am asking perceive a toilet or have a toilet like a private object. I need the answer. And the question and response are participating in a different language game than the person answering, who is in the first person take. And what's happened there is completely different. It's also implicit. That is also a good clue when we go further in this rather complicated text. Kalle Lundahl, please come and join.
Thank you. I would urge all Wittgenstein scholars to put the German text at least in the footnote.
Yes.
I don't understand why in other fields, like in classics, if you don't put at least the original text at least in the footnote, that is not good. So I don't understand this sickness among Wittgenstein scholars. So here I think this is it could be the German text. I don't know, this is paragraph 198. As you see, Hans, I will put it a little bit bigger. Let me see, we could about the Regel, this is the rule in German and in English. Where is the key text? Key phrase. Nein. Ich habe auch noch angedeutet, dass sich einer nur insofern nach einem Wegweiser richtet, als ein einen ständigen Gebrauch eine Gepflogenheit gibt. So I think this is the word that they're discussing. I suppose this is the phrase. Or do you agree, Hans, or is it something else?
Ständigen Gebrauch, yes.
This is the phrase. So this is about, let me see. Lin is, what is he saying? Let me go to standing in here. Standing. So it means in his translation, firm or regular. How would you understand Gebrauch is standing? Something that you do always, I suppose.
Well, as I said in the beginning, I think it's very good to start with the word regular, and then you say, oh, I made a misunderstanding, and I go to firm. I go to not as movable. That is a very good way to segue into the whole thing.
Let me do I have the time to read this in translation?
I think we have about 5 minutes, but yeah, give it a go.
But how can a rule teach me what I have to do at this point? After all, whatever I do can, on some interpretation, be made compatible with the rule. No, that's not what one should say. Rather this, every interpretation hangs in there together with what it interprets, and cannot give it any support. Interpretations by themselves do not determine meaning.
No.
So, is whatever I do compatible with the rule? Let me ask you this, what has the expression of a rule, say signpost, got to do with my actions? What sort of connection obtains here? Well, this one, for example, I've been trained to react in a particular way to this sign, and now I do so react to it. But with this, you have pointed out only a causal connection, only explained how it has to come about that we now go by the signpost. Not what this following the sign really consists in.
No, exactly.
Not so. I have further indicated that the person goes by a signpost only insofar as there is an established usage, a custom. Let me stop there. So standing is established.
Established, it becomes more firm. It's self-organizing. You can think of the chaotic system we have. Do you remember a strange attractor, Kalle? Think of it as a strange attractor. So in the water maelstrom, that happens to come about maybe in a river. First, it will not be established, will be nothing there. And then you have an inclination of it. And then, as time passes, it becomes more and more ständiger. It follows a rule. And in the end, you can throw rocks in it, and there could be a flood, and the maelstrom will still be there. I think that is at least so far in the text, it's a good picture of the whole thing. And a good first understanding is actually regular, but then now we go further. Now we pass McGinn, and now we pass Ginet. Now we beat Baker and Hacker. And that's obviously the purpose of Francis Y. Lin here. He's just great. He beats them all. But of course, it's a matter of specification rather than them being completely wrong or anything.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics showed that there is no local realism. No
Yeah,
local
exactly. No local reality, no local realism. Yeah,
and
exactly.
let me give an example. This is the same example that I gave already once about the widow in Mark chapter 12, verses 41 to 44. And there was a widow who came and put in two very small copper coins for only a few cents. Truly, I tell you, this widow has put more into the treasury than all the others, and so forth. So the point is that this is a private good act. Nobody knows that she put this in the box, these coins, but this has enormous effects, so to say, for the common good. So private acts, although they seem to be in isolation, do have effects. Or I don't know. So local reality is both. It doesn't exist.
It's even worse than that. Local reality doesn't make any sense.
Yes, indeed. So in this case, it would be. To put this in a context, so when the widow puts these few coins there in the box, it has effects on the whole world.
Yeah, it does. Otherwise, you think when you do good deeds, it will be only privately or something like that. Not at all. Everything is included. Everything participates. Very good. I like that Bible site. It's lovely. Thank you very much, Kalle.
Yes. Let's end there, perhaps.
Yeah. This sounds good enough for me. I say thank you for everyone for watching in. Thank you, Kalle Lundahl, for good comments. And do think here, regularity doesn't mean explicitly replicable or that the universe is deterministic in any way. No, not at all. That's nothing of it. But although it's okay to think that in the beginning when you read PI or any of the other texts, this is rather what Wittgenstein assumes is going to be your beginner's mind, so to speak. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a pleasant morning, night, day, or evening, wherever you are. Bye-bye for now.